Hey, everybody. So I'm excited about this conversation with Nadi Hana, who, as you can see in her background, is very connected to sacred geometry. And we're going to have a conversation about that. Um, Nadi came to me like just kind of fell out of the sky into my inbox. I have still don't know how that happened, but I was so excited. I opened this email. I start reading about Nadi, who is a teacher, an artist, a Reiki master, has been a licensed psychotherapist in the past, is an animal communicator. And I'm just like, who is this woman? I want to meet her. And sacred geometry is a big part of what she's here to communicate and teach. And so, anyway, we've had some conversations, and I just thought, okay, I want to share. I want to share this with everybody I know. So we're just going to have a conversation. So thank you for being willing to do this.
Oh, more than willing. I'm super excited. I want to add, Tammy, that the dolphins really brought us together. Like that was I was like, oh, this is a star sister. This is an ocean sister. And I've just felt transmissions from them. And, now we're talking about the sacred geometry and the healing, but it's all part of the connection, right? It's
Right.
awesome to be here.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for remembering that part. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, a little background is for the past 2 years, I have been leading this recovery group for women that Whitney Freya had created a course called The Unstoppable Dream. And it's chock full of all kinds of things, but it's really based on sacred geometry. And so it's for women in recovery, recovering from addiction and just all the things. And what I found was every time I would sit down to do sacred geometry, I would just feel so much better. I would feel so expanded. And a lot of times I'd be coming into it with like confusion or something I was struggling with. And then it just felt like everything shifted. And so anyway, I've just been fascinated with what happens, but I don't really understand like how is this happening? And you are an expert in this, so I'd love to hear your take on this.
Awesome. Thank you. I always kind of freak out about the term expert because when you have a sense of humanity in the larger galactic scale, it's like, oh, we're just doing the best we can to keep up with the basics. But thank you. I appreciate that and that beautiful introduction. What I'll start with is just to say that I spent 10 years in very intimate relationship with the therapeutic process for addiction recovery. And I want to just honor everyone going through that process. That is, it takes everything you've got. It's a tremendous process, and one day at a time. And so I just want to recognize that. And I'm really happy to be supporting that process in a more like proactive, integrative way versus the typical mental health model that is so reactive and not an integrative approach to health and wellness. So I love hearing about the program that you're participating in and leading, and just really grateful for the work you're all doing. It's big work. And so I don't have a specific answer for how it works, right? What I do know is that it works uniquely for each person when we're talking about sacred geometry, and particularly drawing sacred geometry, right? It's a very different process from looking at it, working with it versus drawing it, right? There's an activation, there's an energetic connection when you're drawing, right? Because you're connecting yourself with these fundamental shapes. So the shapes, the geometries are so perfectly balanced, right? They have this inherent harmonic. They are the proportions are consistently, what's the word? I would say pleasing, but they're consistently supportive of our structure, right? And so we are the geometry. This is a much bigger conversation, right? We are the geometry. And so when we work with these beautifully harmonic shapes, we start to entrain our systems with harmony. We start to come into balance, and that balance creates an alignment that helps us move through the world in a more conscious way, in a more connected way. And it also connects us to our higher guidance that we are otherwise disconnected from. So there's a lot in that conversation, right? There's sacred geometry within ourselves, aligning ourselves. And then there's also sacred geometry because everything has a geometric pattern. There's not anything that doesn't have geometry. And so learning about that can really connect you with everything, creates a sense of interconnectedness, creates a sense of unity, consciousness, we would say, and begins to help with that sense of isolation that we have, not only in a recovery and healing process, but just in our day-to-day life. Like we're programmed to think we're alone in this, and we're really not.
Right.
So yeah.
That's just hearing you say all that, I'm just like, because addiction is separation from self, separation from community, and separation from higher self and source. So, I mean, this is truly like a prescription to get back in alignment with self and source.
Totally.
It's when you said harmonics, I just kind of, I had this visual of like energetically just being out of alignment, and that this helps get us back into alignment, in harmony with ourselves. And addiction can't live there when you're in alignment and in harmony.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the kind of thing where if you think about our world, if you think about trauma, abuse, addiction, any kind of instability, right? Our world programs us for that. Unfortunately, it's like an assault on our system. We are guided towards unhealthy, disconnected practices, and that's a sad aspect of this reality that we come into. And so every effort that we make, is towards reconnection, is towards integration, is towards knowing ourselves. And this is such a great tool for that. That is recovery, that is coming back into balance, because everything in this world tries to take us out of it. Television, programming, fear-based mentalities, scarcity. We've got to fight for everything we've got. And when you start to tap into that harmony and that connectedness, it creates a sense of security in this world. And I'm talking really subtle levels. It takes all of these practices over time to repair that place that we feel we're alone in it, that we have to fight for everything, and that we don't have any support. So it's subtle, but it happens over time. And it's this quiet reassurance that we're connected, and that we don't have to go through this process without support.
Yeah. And then do you feel like, just with the evolution of consciousness and how everything is speeding up, that like as we're doing the sacred geometry, it is the energy right now just going to support us even more than it ever has, as far as like recovery?
I do. Things are accelerating, but in both weirdness and repair, right? So it's a real choice point right now, where we can choose things that take us down, or choose things that lift us up. I remember us saying in the therapeutic world, that was, everything is either a reason to relapse or to stay stronger, right? Like you can choose nearly any direction from any kind of seductive pattern, right? You can say, oh no, I'm going to choose something else. Or you can say, oh yeah, I know that place, I'm going in for comfort. And the thing I know about these times is that there's energetic collective support, far more collective support than there was before. So if you choose a new pathway, lots of energy is going to support that. Whereas before it was a little bit harder, pushing uphill, And if you choose the familiar way of, what's the word? There's a good way to say it. There's a hard way to say it, of self-destructive comfort, right? Because that's typically like, that's it. It's comforting, but ultimately it doesn't create health. There's lots of support for that too. That's where we can look around and see how easy it is to take ourselves in a disconnected direction. So that's how I interpret these times, and how they're different is so much more like energy, emphasis, and power behind whatever choice you want to make, right? Total choice point, and you got to do it again and again and again. Just, that was surprising and annoying to me, that I couldn't just choose one and then it was like, okay, here's the path I've chosen. Like again and again and again, that confirmation of, I want health, I want integration. And the geometry helps with that consistency, right? You're just drawing a bunch of shapes, but it's creating a structure that makes it easier and easier to choose, a healthy, nourishing, healing vibe,
Yeah, it feels like it strengthens, so like it strengthens the harmonics. The more you do it, the more you see it.
Yeah.
What about this magnificent piece of art behind you? Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, it's the Shri yantra, and it's a very ancient mandala in Hindu tradition, and it's used for meditation. It's used for activation. It helps you tap into the parts of you that are very dormant, but really here with us, and that helps us access our full potential, right? So this is just one of the shapes, a very complex shape, and I got to drawing that shape. It's 6 feet by 6 feet, and I will say that that is an example of the progression that the geometry takes you on, right? So that's a good thing to speak to, is I took a leap from that mental health world, and it was very uncomfortable. Anxiety, no idea what I was doing, no purpose, no identity, very uncomfortable. And I started drawing. It anchored me in the shapes, and then it anchored me. It gave me the ability to float and figure out what I was doing. So I was drawing fairly compulsively. I didn't know what it was doing. I just knew I felt better, just like what you said. I just felt better. So I stayed with it. And then that feeling better led me to the next thing. I was creating so much art. People were like, oh, you should have a show. You should put that up somewhere. And then once I had a show, the geometry was on the walls and people wanted to learn about it. And so it was this natural progression and evolution towards starting to teach about it, holding classes, community college, one-off separate classes that were available to people. And my point is, it leads you on your expansion. It will help you find the next thing because you're tapping into your alignment and your guidance, right? So geometry led me to some of the more extraordinary topics like off-planet origins and light language and crop circles. So it got pretty wild, and I've gotten bigger. I've stepped into myself. I've stepped into things I never thought I would be doing. And ultimately it leads to something like this, where the expression is so large because you're growing. It's a match, it's whether you're able to show up in a consistent way in life. Like that can be as big as you are. That can be such a victory when you're in recovery, when you're working to stabilize your system and move towards health. Just being able to show up for yourself. I'm going to take out the just, right? Being able to show up for yourself, for others, and have that sense of success and wellness. That's huge. That's so huge in recovery. It's so huge in the path of wellness.
Yes, yes. Well, that piece of art is magnificent. I would love to sit and meditate in front of that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm highly connected to the shape. I use it every day, and um, that piece, just in particular, just detail fun, curiosity wise, is uh, my vision was to have this shape in a yoga mat and be able to cut it out and take it with me everywhere and meditate with it, like out on the rocks or wherever. And it got so big, it's 3 yoga mats taped together, and then I drew the shape and cut it out because that was my vision, to have it to travel with. And then it was too fragile. So then I had to make the background. And I've never worked with spray paint before. I just know this is how I see the Shri, which is just light popping out of it. So I put the yoga mats on top of it, and it's really fun.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
It
Wow.
was fun. Yeah.
So, so you in the class, the recovery classroom, we focus on the flower of life and Metatron's cube, but you teach all the geometry. You've got online classes, right? Um, can you give the website where people can find that and find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the online course is an 8 module course, right? So I'll try to remember them all, but it sounds like you all have been doing some of it, you're familiar. And it's basics, it's the seed of life through the flower of life, and then into Metatron's cube and all of the platonic solids and the dodecahedron. And then there's also the tesseract, which is an 8-fold geometry of time travel. That's a really fun one. And then let's see, I have that one. Oh, and then there's polygons, right, which are more basic in their patterns, but they hold the keys to mystery schools and the information that really helps us tap into our own, integrative process, working with pentagons and heptagons and all of the top secret, information that was used to create and influence our reality, right, in very conscious ways. And then I believe I have 2 specific classes, which are drawing the 64 star tetrahedron, which is the fundamental fabric of space-time, and it's embedded in the flower of life that you're doing. It's kind of just next expression, and it's really fun. We actually just did that in my community college last night. But that course is at a website called Star Family Wisdom, and that's a website that is oriented towards connecting us with our galactic family and our origins. So that's a really fun site, and the course is under the shop, right? So you can go purchase the geometry, and then the one-off courses are on my site. I list a bunch of different classes, and that's Galactic Rose Geometry. And there's a bunch of wild stuff on there. I've got near-death experiences and psychedelics, and how we can work with transformational processes. And that's not to say, that's like we call it the entheogenic aspect of psychedelics, right? It's that use where we're guided, we're held, and it's for the purpose of transformation, right? Very conscious use. And then but all of the tools for accessing what I call our multidimensional self, right? You probably reference it too, but the different dimensions of ourselves, our psychic capacities, our intuitive understandings and interpretations of the world, like, we've been cut off from those. And so, it's, I would say, and I don't mean to make light by any means, but there's definitely different phases of recovery, right? Like, there's recovery to the point where, like, okay, I can move in this world in a stable way and make healthy choices. But then we're recovering also from being cut off from everything that we really are. It's this remembering, it's this recovering these aspects of ourselves. And so near-death experiences, light language, connecting with our off-planet family, and whales and dolphins is really part of what connected us, just to bring it full circle. And all of the invisible realms that we have forgotten and are, disconnected from, very intentionally, because we're extraordinary beings.
Yeah.
So Yeah.
And that kind of brings it full circle for me too, because I've long said that the women I work with who are choosing recovery are the most empathic, highly attuned people on the planet. And that we've been so sensitive and didn't have access to all this, and we numbed it down just to survive. And so now it's like recovery is amazing because we're tapping into all these gifts, and it's just like
Yeah.
so exciting. So
Next level. Yeah.
yeah.
Just to add, from my experience, the anyone dealing with abuse, trauma, addiction, all of the things that are typically invisible, the anyone working with that is extraordinarily strong, stronger than the average bear, right? That's kind of plodding through life and things make sense. And, it's one step after another. And here's the program of what you should do in an acceptable society. The strength that it takes to recover from trauma, from addiction, it's so invisible. And I just wanted to recognize the effort, the continuity, that's not the right word, what's the word when you have the fortitude to there's a C word, but you have the strength, the ability, the wisdom. I mean, it takes an extraordinary human to dig out and to climb out of the burden of other people's abuse. And I just want to acknowledge that it's a tremendous work, and I'm so grateful that you're offering the recovery work and that you have that broader perspective of integrating our sensitivities, our intuitive abilities, our psychic abilities, and really going the whole way with that integration and healing. So sacred geometry can help, but so much of what you're offering is just incredible. So I'm really happy to be a part of it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And thanks for just validating what intuitively feels so right. And just hearing you, it's like, yeah, it really makes a difference. And that's motivation to like show up to the canvas or the art journal, whatever, and just like drop into this, because it's literally getting us in harmony. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sort of takes everything you've got to get to that point where you've got the pen to the paper and you're supporting and investing in your creativity, because everything in our world tells us, oh, that's a waste of time. The other things come first, but to actually prioritize a creative expression, all of this is to say you're doing so much more on so many levels. I keep doing this the whole time, and I'm just aware, like, this is the symbol of healing, of geometry, of what we're activating, so opening the channels.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I really encourage people to go check out your classes, because I took one of them, and I already knew how to draw Metatron's cube, but taking your class anyway just got me excited about it again. It was just from a different perspective, and you just make it really user friendly, and really gets the inner critic out of the way. It was a really fun way to do it. So I'm looking forward to doing all of those. So thank you for putting those out in the world. And thank you for taking the time today for this.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'll add one thing about the classes is, we're drawing shapes, but there's so much information behind it, right? There's centuries and off-planet intelligence that inform these shapes that have created the perfect harmonics, right? This isn't like human made. This is vast intelligence. And so in the classes, I'm also sharing a little bit of that, but because of my mental health background as well, it really has that therapeutic aspect where this is healing, this is reflective of our true selves. And so all of that comes into the class. It's not just like pen to paper, here's Metatrons. It's like, oh, here's how we're activating the 5 elements within our system and coming into harmony. So yeah, thank you for that endorsement. Appreciate it.
Yes. Yes. All right. Thank you so much for this conversation, and I look forward to having more.
Me too. Thanks, Tammy.
Okay. Bye.